Woo! All right, friends, it is week 3 in review time here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. These are big, fun episodes where we go through all the ads, all of the injury replacement pickups, all of the difficult holds that you should be holding, all of the cuts, all of the streamers, all of the watch list guys, and on and on and on we go. Sit back and relax. We've got a lot of players to talk about. I haven't even counted them up yet, but I will before I make the title of this show because I like to title shows based on how many players we talk about, and it's going to be a lot. It's going to be maybe a new record, but that also means we need to move through it pretty quickly. So, I'm Dan Vespers. Thanks as always for tuning in, everybody. I insist that despite it being a hellscape, you must find me over on Twitter at Dan Vespers because there's just so much we do in between podcasts over there. It's DANBESBRIS. Drop that 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe however you're taking in the content. And YouTubers, hit the like button while you're hearing me tell you to do it. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to NBA to college basketball to NHL to UFC and MMA. Bet Online has it all. Head there today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. Let's rock, people. Fantasy basketball week 3 in review. Things have settled a bit, but injuries abound. I've been wanting to use the word abound on a show for a long time, so today we used it. We, on today's episode, will cover the stories of the past 5-ish or so days, 5 to 7, I guess, but, 7 days ago is pretty obsolete once the season starts. And we will work our way through them using categorization, which, again, kind of doing the best I can with this. Not everybody fits into a perfect bucket, but we're going to do what we can. Again, follow at Dan Vespers on Twitter. Follow Old Man Squad on Twitter. That one will follow you back, which, what the hell is that one up to these days? Ooh, 2,376. That's kind of fun. And Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. Like, rate, subscribe. You guys know the drill. Let's talk about injury replacements first. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll probably do this little 20-second PSA at the beginning of all of these weekly review shows. The reason we do the injury replacement guys first is because last year I was going through the ads board and the streamers board and the watch list board, and I was doing the show live, which we don't do many of those anymore. YouTube doesn't treat them algorithm-wise quite the same way, so this is just a little bit simpler. Also, if I need to get up and go deal with a screaming child, simpler to do when I can pause a recording. But let's not worry about that for a moment. I was doing those live shows, and people kept chiming in with things like, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? And I can't even tell you how many times I had to stop and go, guys, just wait, because they're on the injury replacement board. So this time, we're going through this one first. This year, I should say. We're going through the injury board first. And that way, when someone's not there, you'll find out where they're categorized after. But there's so many on this one, and I think it gives you a nice kind of firm starting point. But we'll go through the injury replacement board pretty quickly. There may be one or two players I want to stop and provide a little context around. But for the most part, this stuff is laid out right before you. These are, by the way, organized basically in order of confidence, and you can see my evolving injury board in the Google Sheet that's free. The link is in the show description. I would strongly recommend you guys navigate in there because there's a lot of other fun stuff, and I'm just going to try to add things as they strike my fancy throughout the year. Norman Powell, who, again, might very well have value after Kawhi Leonard comes back, but it ain't going to be this good. Peyton Pritchard with Jaylen Brown out. He was very hot before he went down, which I think, and you'll see he falls actually into two categories today. So we'll talk more about Pritchard when we get to the other spot where he shows up. But certainly with Jaylen Brown out, he's a must-play guy. Jose Alvarado with CJ McCollum down has been terrific. He's one of the guys that I've kind of targeted in terms of injury board. On the year, Alvarado is number 82, and that was with a handful of games where McCollum was actually in. Over the last week, since CJ went down, Alvarado's number 25. That's why you go and get a backup point guard. They put up those damn numbers fast. Gradey Dick has been a nice injury replacement with Emmanuel Quickley, Scotty Barnes, Bruce Brown, and Kelly Olynyk all out. Scotty Pippen Jr. was already a really good injury play with Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart down, and now Ja Morant is on the shelf for a week and a half, something like that. So easy call on Scotty Pippen Jr. And frankly, to me, he's one of the premier ones with now all those guards out. Make sure he's not unrostered. And it's not going to be perfect all the time because eventually the Grizzlies will get some guys back. But right now, delicious. Davion Mitchell also falls into this point guard hanging out on the wire department. I have no idea how Davion was unrostered in so many spots. And I have to admit, even I thought I was like a game late on Mitchell, but he's still only 16% rostered in Yahoo leagues. 16 people. That's wild. He's number 58 over the last week. He's poor man's Jose Alvarado. He's Jose without the scoring. He's been good. 12 points, 6.5 assists, 1.8 steals. Davion needs to be started everywhere while all these guys are out. Now, Emmanuel Quickley is going to come back. He might even be back as soon as this weekend. And then you can sort of rip the Band-Aid off with Mitchell. But as long as Quickley's out, and we haven't seen any reports on him yet today, give it time, I suppose, Davion needs to be going. Peyton Watson missed some free throws in his first Aaron Gordon fill-in game, but he also had 3 blocks. That's the key there. Ayo Dosumu has been kind of a disappointing Zach LaVine fill-in, so now we're getting into the guys that are not quite as locked into value. This is sort of your cutoff. Rui Hachimura, if he's over his flu bug, is a okay fill-in for Jared Vanderbilt. Bub Carrington, who he's had a few pretty good games in a row. I still think we're sort of hanging right on the edge of some down games because young players, they have this up and down stuff going on. But he's, to me, someone you probably need to be getting into lineups while Kuzma and Brogdon are out. Julian Champagnie, he'd be higher on this list, except it sounds like Devin Vassell is coming back on Saturday, so that's tomorrow. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think Devin's going to play more than about 20 minutes in his season debut, maybe 22. We'll see. So there's probably a little bit of shelf life left on Champagnie, but it ain't much. Kelly Oubre Jr., I thought was about to fade into oblivion, but not with Tyrese Maxey going down. There's going to be enough usage there where he'll probably still get to do some stuff. Santi Aldama, Smart, Bane, Ja, all out for Memphis. He's going to have to do some stuff on offense. Ochai Agbaji, again, lots of Raptors out. He's an efficiency play, but he doesn't pile up the counting stats, so it's a little bit of a different set, a little bit of a different, I guess, target you're working with there. Benedict Matherin's looked really good filling in for Aaron Nesmith, and it kind of feels like the Pacers have looked pretty good with Mathurin filling in, just getting more offensively out of the team. Somehow Indiana's 4-4, and they're tied for 3rd place. The East needs to get its collective head out of its rear end. It's crazy right now what's going on. Doesn't matter for this podcast. Russell Westbrook, I wrote points league only, but maybe I need to amend that to like points league or punt free throw. So let's amend it actually. Points league punt free throw. There, you guys can see me fixing it on the fly. That's better. If you're not in those, the bad is going to ultimately outweigh the good. More injury plays. There's so many. Andre Drummond, he's got like a game and a half of value left. Thank God Joel Embiid is almost back. Najee Marshall had one good fill-in game with Lively and PJ Washington out. Then he had one bad game. I would say he probably tips ever so slightly to the good side, but it ain't by much. Tumani Kamara is probably about to lose his value. Shaedon Sharpe is back now, and his minutes aren't there. But when they are, I would probably shy away from almost any streamer-level guys in Portland. Kaishan George with Kyle Kuzma out. He's been fine, unspectacular, hit some threes. He did get some defensive stats, so that's a thing to keep an eye on. Goga Batadze. I'm not fully convinced on Goga yet, but he's been good for the 2 games that Wendell Carter Jr. has been out, and we don't know how long exactly that's going to be. And we've also seen Wagner kind of fade a little bit, but we also saw it, 15, 20, 25 times last year. Those guys traded spots sporadically, And it could happen again. So that's why my confidence with Goga is not higher than having him sort of low down on the injury board. Isaiah Stewart is a low confidence play. Jalen Duren is likely to miss a game or two because those ankles, man, tweaked it. And they're already things that are sort of running sore with him. Stewart's just not that good. Reality, fantasy, whatever. But again, if you find a starting center hanging out on the wire who's not terrible for your percentages, it's hard to totally pass them over. Brandon Boston Jr. is on the list because the Pelicans just keep losing guys. Jordan Hawkins is now down for 2 weeks. This is crazy. So the Pelicans, well, they got Zion back. So I guess, that's a trade they probably would take. But still down Trey Murphy, still down DeJounte Murray, still down Herb Jones, now down Jordan Hawkins. They were briefly down Zion. They're down CJ McCollum. That's crazy. Grant Williams out in Charlotte. Mark Williams is down. Nick Richards is down. And Grant's sort of like the last center standing along with Taj Gibson. Was it enough? Borderline. Keldon Johnson is one that's probably going to come off of this list. I'm just throwing him in there just so you guys see sort of the completionists' standards. Vassell, as he works his way back, Keldon Johnson's going to lose a lot of his role. Now, Jeremy Sohan is out for 6 weeks probably. So there might be something there, but it's not going to be, you're not going to use that against a Roto Games cap. I put Trey Mann back on this list now with Miles Bridges out in Charlotte. Kind of feels like Mann's going to just have to do the same thing he did when Brandon Miller was out, which was to take a bunch of extra shots. But I don't know for certain that that's what's about to happen because we haven't seen it yet. Miles Bridges got hurt late in their last ball game, so we didn't get any real data. Zachary Reese-O'Shea is someone I definitely trust more in head-to-head than Roto. He's, of course, laden with a large role right now with Bogdanovic and DeAndre Hunter each out for the Atlanta Hawks. And finally, the last name on the injury board is Neemias Queta, who put up a couple of decent games. Nothing huge, but Luke Cornett going down was a big reason why. Jaylen Brown being out is the reason why the Celtics went big. So that meant more Cornett and more Queta. But Cornett going down is why they're like, okay, fine, Al Horford, you're the power forward now. Queta, you're our center. And Peyton Pritchard, you're going to sort of be like the fill-in everything else. And they're just not going to go all that deep. So this is one where I think we still probably need an injury update before we go a little farther. Let's do a quick commercial before we get to everything else. So the ads board, for those that are watching on YouTube, you're seeing something a little bit different. For those listening, this isn't going to change much for you. I'm going to try, and we'll see how long this lasts, because I'm guessing the list is just going to sort of snowball over the weeks and months. This is a running list now of everyone that I believe is a rest of season type play from the very first day of the year. Guys that were largely undrafted, meaning, rostership numbers of 25% or lower. Typically lower. In fact, the only guy on this list that was higher than that was probably Dyson Daniels. And that was only because we were super high on him on this show. And how many different analysts did we have on our program leading up to the season that were all big time into Daniels? I think like 4 or 5 of the analysts, this is my guys kind of dude shows, had Dyson. But the rest of these names were on the wire in the vast majority of leagues. So the 4 names that have been pickups for all 3 weeks are Bilal Coulibaly, Christian Braun, PJ Washington, and Dyson Daniels. Nothing's changed with those guys. I'm leaving them on the list. The only footnote would be Bilal had a slow game against the Warriors, and the Wizards haven't played in like a week, basically now. But he played 39 minutes in that game, so you have nothing to worry about. Other than, obviously, his field goal percent was not going to stay at 60. And then PJ Washington has an injury, but the fun thing about PJ is that he's putting up quality fantasy numbers while having some of the worst shooting numbers in basketball right now. He's at 42 from the field and 38 at the free throw line. But because of his 2.9 defensive stats, a three-pointer, and almost 8 rebounds a game, it hasn't mattered. So if that ever starts to level off and you get him up to like a 45-70 kind of splits, you're talking about a guy that could actually shift up the board a little bit. So I'm holding on to PJ until we get at least a timetable on him. because I think he's going to put up decent numbers all year. The players that have been on this list 2 weeks in a row now are Alex Sarr, who was a little bit of a question mark those first couple of games. We saw some blocks, but the minutes were super low. The minutes have trended up, and obviously better now with no Kyle Kuzma around, but kind of just trending up as a whole. And it looks like he could end up being a really interesting fantasy play because much like with PJ Washington, Sarr is number 62 in fantasy on 7 rebounds, almost 3 blocks a game, while still shooting just 36% from the field. And I imagine the blocks number will probably come down a little bit as the rigors of a season take shape and his team start to understand that he's going to be flying in and trying to swat some stuff. But it looks like it could be a good year for him. And this is the type of rookie. Okay, obviously, top couple of picks are always rookies we should be looking at. But the type of rookie that we have said for multiple years in a row now, softening my stance on rookies here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball to the ones that will not break your percentages. And Sarr is breaking your field goal percent right now, but I'm not as worried about that as I am with big men and free throws. And the other stuff is just sort of falling into place. He doesn't have to have the ball in his hands. There's other guys on the team that can handle that. So that's kind of nice. Jaden Ivey makes his second appearance on the board. He's much more of a head-to-head guy than Roto. And why do we say something like that? Well, because he's good at scoring. He's good at threes. Rebounds are meh. Assists are okay. Steals are okay. Field goal percent is okay. Free throws not great, and turnovers are pretty bad. So he's got that like 1 or 2 drag categories. Luckily, the free throws, I think he had one good ball game that kind of pulled him up a little bit. So he's hovering on the edge of 9-cat roto type value, and he's very much in 9-cat head-to-head because typically in head-to-head, everyone's punting something. No one's trying to win all 9 in competitive head-to-head stuff. So if you're punting free throws, he moves up. If you're punting turnovers, he moves up. Honestly, if you're punting steals right now, he moves up, but I don't know that necessarily holds for him. But overall, like, just enough counting stuff out of Jaden Ivey to counterbalance whatever negatives there might be. And making their initial appearance in the ads board, Tari Eason, who was on the watch list for the first couple of weeks and then had that sort of big explosion game. And he's number 56 in 21 minutes a game, although I don't think he's going to keep up 2.8 defensive stats in 21 minutes. Although you could argue maybe the rebounding gets better for him. So Eason very much belongs on rosters while we see how Houston sorts out their bench. And Shaedon Sharpe, if you're a punt field goal team, is also on your board. I know he shot 6 out of 9 in his first ball game, but that was the adrenaline day. That's all going to level when he hits the rust day. When the adrenaline wears off, you tend, and this is not just with Sharpe, this is with all guys coming back from injury, kind of making that initial game where they're like, oh, I got all the energy in the universe, and then oopsies, I spent too much in that first game. Now my body's got to acclimate. But we saw enough of Sharpe over the last year to know he's probably not going to be a high field goal percent guy, but he is going to be involved in what the team's doing on offense. So 9-cat roto, I pass. Punt field goal head-to-head, that's the team I want him on. Here's your easy holds. There's 6 names on this board, and they're largely, not all of them, but many of them are holds from last week, kind of rollover names. Jrue Holiday is still on there. He's been disappointing at number 168, but it continues to be the fact that he has no defensive stats so far. It's really, really weird, but this is the type of thing that can happen even over a 3-week span. Jrue Holiday hasn't had, what's this? He's played 9 games, and 5 of them, he's had no defensive stats at all. And in the other 4, he had 1 block, 1 steal, 1 steal. This is extraordinarily unusual. Jrue Holiday, for basically the entirety of his career, on a per 36, has been someone who's hovered in the 1.5 steals and like 0.7, 0.8 blocks region. I don't expect him to get 36 minutes, so it's sort of a stupid way to grade him out. But even last year, he was at 1.7 combined defensive stats, and right now he's at 0.4. And that's basically the difference in his value. His other stuff is not that different. Rebounds are a little bit down, assists are a little bit down, but a lot of that's because Boston has played in a copious number of blowouts so far, and Peyton Pritchard has come off the bench and gotten hot, and they were like, all right, Drew, we don't need you to come back in. Mr. Holiday, you take the rest of the evening off. It's not because he's playing poorly. They just don't need it. It'll be fine. As we get to the dog days, games are going to get more competitive, and Peyton Pritchard's going to cool off and blah, blah, blah. And most importantly, Holiday's going to get defensive stats. It's not going to be this way the whole year. D'Lo, this is, I think he's an easy hold, and I know some people are going to argue with me on that one because he's number 132, and he just got benched in the Lakers' last ball game. But you know what? Good. Bench him if he's not paying attention. Send a message. We're trying to win. Also, he's shooting 37.5% from the field. So there's a couple of things at play here. Rotation-wise, he's in a better spot now than he was a week ago. He just has to actually compete. He wasn't competing in that Memphis game. Not to be a D'Lo apologist or anything, but there were other Lakers that were also not competing. His was just the most egregious. Draymond Green, I believe, is an easy hold. He had a couple of good ball games, and he had a couple of quieter games. It seems like he's going to level off probably somewhere near the 100 range, and that's fine. Bobby Portis, he's an easier hold when Giannis is out, but I think he's a hold either way. And again, there is sort of a punt thing going on there. Maybe you're punting threes. Maybe you're punting assists. Maybe you just need and he's not center eligible in every league, but he should be. It's frankly stupid if he's not. But like 13 points and 9 rebounds on typically okay percentages, which might get better for him. That's 100 range kind of stuff. Onyeka Okongwu, I still have him in the easy holds. Some may argue he is a tougher hold, but I love the percentages. I love the fact that he's not blocking any shots so far. And I love that because I know at some point there's going to be a handful of them. And I know he's not like the big shot blocker he appeared to be 2 or 3 years ago, but it ain't going to be 0.6. That'll come up a little bit. So he's an easy hold for me. And Amen Thompson, who's finally showing some signs of life over the last couple of ball games. He's still nowhere to be found on rank boards because first 6 games were abysmal. But the upside is so huge, you kind of have to figure out a way to convince yourself to hang on. Here are the tough holds. I also call them the time to worry guys. Jonas Valanciunas, who I think is safely on rosters as long as the Wizards have somebody hurt, because that's what's helped him a little bit. He wasn't playing enough or doing enough prior to that, and he's sitting at 133 overall right now, but kind of trending the wrong way. Dante DiVincenzo is a hold. His last 2 ball games have been better. That's been important for him. The percentages are still under where we'd expect them to be, but it does kind of feel like 27 minutes is the target for Dante, and 27 minutes for him in a not super high usage role probably profiles as around top 100 kind of numbers. So there isn't, I don't think, that big ceiling that we thought there might be before the season started. Like, could he get to 30 minutes? Could he be the true backup point guard? Not really. I mean, he's in there when Conley's out a lot of the time, but in those minutes, then you sometimes see Julius Randle kind of running the offense. You'll see Anthony Edwards run the offense. It's not as much as like, oh, Dante, you're the point guard now. You're just sort of like guarding other point guards. But he's a hold. All these guys are holds in this list. Mike Conley's a hold because one better ball game, and he's back inside the 10th round. He's number 118. Field goal percent for Conley is still at 34%. But again, this is what I'm talking about. When that field goal percent gets up to 44 and the scoring is instead of 8, it goes up to like 10.5, he's inside the top 100, and it's really not that hard to see. So that's why, to me, he's a hold, because the stat set just translates. High assist, low turnover guy, too. Colin Sexton, I have to admit, I am kind of worried about Sexton. He had a better ball game last time out, but he's really doing nothing besides scoring, and that ultimately won't end up being enough. Wendell Carter Jr. is on my holds list, kind of a difficult hold. He was putting up good numbers. I am curious what this, like, he seems so damn injury prone these days. But you're holding to see what he looks like when he comes back, because he was posting near 100 range kind of stuff, and that doesn't grow on trees. Herb Jones is a very tough hold. He's out for a while, and I don't honestly now, but like the hope with Herb was that he was going to be able to do some stuff while most of the other Pelicans were out. And That didn't materialize. So what happens if he comes back after some of the other Pels come back? I honestly don't know. I'm trying to hold in the hopes that he's back in 2 weeks or something like that. But also, I get it if you can't, and I wouldn't really fault you if you can't. And Clint Capella kind of falls in the Jonas Valanciunas camp. Every once in a while, he'll have a better ball game. He's also shooting 79% at the free throw line, so that hasn't really started to take its toll yet. But the other stuff with Capella is bad. If he was putting up 10 and 6 with under 1.1 combined defensive stats on any other year, he wouldn't even be close to value. The only reason he is right now is because he's at 74% from the field and 79% at the free throw line. And we simply know that over time, that's not what's going to be the case. All right, I mean, he shoots a high percentage from the field. He's 62 in his career. But this is a guy who's never shot better than 64% at the foul line ever. 79? I don't think so. I think the blocks could come up a little bit. And he could eventually, we're talking about Capella right now, work his way back into a punt free throw kind of last center sort of build. But right now, yeesh, he's hanging on by a thread. And that thread is the fact that his last ball game was a better one. And these are the 5 guys that have gone too far. I can't even convince myself to hold them, so how could I possibly convince you? Ben Simmons, who's stuck at 24 minutes a game, and he's number 180 in 24 minutes a game. He's very much telling us that I need to play 30 minutes if I'm going to have fantasy value, and I don't think he ever gets to 30 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does, and if he does, you can re-add him. But for now, what the hell are we doing here? Alex Caruso. I love you so, Alex Caruso. Averaging 2.8 defensive stats in 20 minutes a game. He had 6 in their last ball game. And I know the field goal percent has been truly horrible. He's shooting 24%, but he's just not doing enough. And because even when the field goal percent gets up into the 40s, the steals and blocks are not going to stay that high in that low number of minutes. We're going to need him to get up to about 26, 27 minutes if you want that close to 3 defensive stat number to hold, not 20. So, sorry, Alex. I wanted you on my teams, but now I don't. Trace Jackson-Davis, minutes are not consistent enough. He's playing 18 minutes a game. That's an easy one. You can't hold on to a center playing 18 minutes unless, and I try to do this once a week, unless they are Nerlens Noel from like 7 years ago. Jonathan Kuminga is one on my cut list, and you guys are going to yell at me about it, but dude ain't inside the top 200. The Warriors are winning, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse by the moment for Kuminga. Every time you think, oh, this couldn't get any worse, it gets worse. And yeah, he'll probably hit a heater at some point, have 2 or 3 weeks where he puts up better numbers, and you can run him during that. But I'll tell you right now, the team that sits on him the entire year to enjoy that 3-week heater and then sits on him again afterwards is not going to get a guy that's a good fantasy play for the entire season. He should be treated as a stream while hot player, and he hasn't been treated as that yet. So let me be the first. And Jeremy Sohan, who last week he was on the ads board, but now he's on the drops board. And unfortunately, the reason he's on the drops board is because guys that sit outside the top 100 should not be camped on for 6 weeks. That roster slot is more important over the 6 weeks than the upside of the stash. And Sohan's been good. He's top 100 when you're punting free throws. He's like top 130 when you're not. The points, the boards, the assists, the steals, the field goal percent, all that stuff was a decent number for him. But it ain't enough to sit on him for a month and a half. It's just not. The rule of thumb, by the way, just to pause our journey here, because we're getting towards the end. We have the watch list, guys, and I think that might be it. Is that the last page? No, there's watch list, and then there's stream while hot, guys. A brief respite from the lists. Maybe I'll throw a commercial in here as well. But the concept of the stash, and we don't need to do a whole show on this, but there should be kind of a timeline that you're willing to put up with based on what you think a player is going to be. Like, if you think a player is a top 40 guy, you should pretty much stash them forever. If you think a player is a top 50 to 60 kind of guy, I think you should be willing to stash them for up to 6 weeks, maybe as many as 8. If you think someone hovers in the top 75 range when they're healthy, that's that 4-5 week max kind of camping. 90, 75, or 80 to 100 range, that's also kind of in that 3-4 week range, like a month. But once you get outside the top 100, I wouldn't hold any of those guys longer than about 6 games. And it's got to be someone that's sitting outside the top 100 where you're like, yeah, things could really break right for this dude in a lot of different ways. Like an Okongwu or something like that. These are guys you sit on for 2-3 weeks at a time. But if you're getting, like, Sohan is an example of someone who's outside the top 130, and if you're punting free throw, he's around 100. So we're talking about, if this was 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, maybe, but 6, no way. I need someone that is like a guaranteed top 75 player better if I'm going to sit on them for 6 weeks. Okay, back into the lists. Here's the watch list. It's a lot of the same guys as last time, but a few buddies moved around. I think we had Tari Eason jump up a level. But the watch list is Josh Green in Charlotte. I don't know what he does with Miles Bridges out, but maybe they just slowly ramp him up anyway. Yves Missi in New Orleans. And as the team gets healthy, I don't think he's going to do a lot. So we'll see. DeAndre Hunter. What a wreck that dude's knee is turning out to be. He looked like he might be in line for a pretty good job this year. Andre Jackson Jr., who just got the starting job from Gary Trent Jr. out in Milwaukee. And all those guys are going to turn to pumpkins when Chris Middleton shows up, but we don't know when the hell that's going to be. So keep an eye on Jackson. He didn't do a lot in his first start, but he did get 4 steals, and that's not nothing. If Miles McBride goes on a heater, does he start to get more consistent minutes? He's on the watch list. Jalen Wells out in Memphis, mostly because they have a lot of guys hurt right now. Julian Strother in Denver with Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon down. His minutes went up. But, and by the way, everybody can bite me. There were a bunch of you that were like, oh, Dan, you don't even know what you're talking about with Julian Strother. No, there weren't minutes for him when that team was healthy. We saw that. When Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon were in there, he didn't do anything. Now you keep an eye on him. Watch list. Doesn't seem like there's going to be enough, but you never know. So everybody get off my back. Royce O'Neal could be on the ads board. He's really close, but I'm going to keep him on the watch list for a little bit longer. And Kyle Lowry is the last name on the watch list. This is mostly because Tyrese Maxey is out. And we might see Lowry get to do a little bit here before Embiid comes back. I'm more interested in what happens after Embiid's around. Do they even need a point guard if Joel is just going to be initiating most of the offense? That's why I'm not moving on this. And finally, the stream while hot, bench or cut when cold guys. These are the dudes in the NBA that run really hot and really cold, and they are usually streaky enough that you can kind of game it out a little bit. One of them is Peyton Pritchard, who's obviously above that right now because of the Jaylen Brown injury. But when that team's healthy, he was shooting like almost 50% from downtown and making 5 threes a game. Yeah, obviously that's a guy you need to play, but understand just because that's not going to hold all year, and we all know law of averages, certain things aren't going to hold, it doesn't mean that you can't try to get something out of it. Kevin Huerter seems to have now cooled off. There was a Huerter heater. The Huerter heater stopped. Malik Monk, his teammate, when he gets going, same kind of thing. If he gets hot, he'll get more minutes for a week or two. We haven't really seen it happen yet. Jordan Clarkson out in Utah. It's really obvious when Jordan Clarkson gets hot. And there's usually like 4 games in a row where he gets crazy. And then kaboom. Get out of the way before he ruins your team. Lou Dort has been awesome so far this year. I don't have the gall to put him in the straight ads department because I think we all know that what he's doing is not going to stick. The percentages in particular, but also kind of the defensive stats. But it's also possible that some of his stuff just got a little bit better. So stream him while he's hot. Lou Dort, I'm going to do it. I'll do it right with you. And when the wheels come off, which ultimately they almost definitely will, that's when we'll go figure out something else to do. But he's available in leagues still. Slowly getting at it over this very prolonged hot streak. And I'll admit, I've been super low on the uptake there. Buddy Hield, who's obviously a play. He's been hot basically since the first game of the season. He's a first rounder right now. So you're like, Dan, why the bleep? Actually, he's a second rounder now. He's number 13. Like, Dan, why is this dude even on the list? He's a play in all formats. Yeah, but he's shooting 52% on almost all three-pointers. And so he's averaging 21 points and 4.5 threes so far this year. It's conceivable that Buddy Hield has value all season long, but it's also very easy to point at these numbers and go, this doesn't make sense. He's a career 43.5% shooter. And don't get me wrong, he's a great jump shooter, 40% from three throughout his career. He's at 51% right now. What he should be doing is a lot more like Buddy Hield in Sacramento before he got traded to Indiana. That was 2021, 2022. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers he put up there. He was at 14 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, just under a steal, and 3 3-pointers. That was a playable Buddy Hield. I think he was like top 80 or something like that. So it was good, but it wasn't first round. He's going crazy right now. Problem, of course, with a sell on Buddy Hield is I don't know what someone's going to give you for him. I don't think you could sell Buddy Hield for a top 50 guy. So is there a point if you think he's going to be like top 75, top 85, something like that long term? By the way, I would go back, and I probably should have had him higher on our buckets, so there's no sugarcoating the fact that Buddy Hield was not extraordinarily high on my let's take a shot kind of dudes. But do you remember early in the offseason when the Warriors signed Hield, and I was like, here's what I bet happens. And I don't remember whose show that was. I was like, I bet they start Hield, and he's great for like 3 weeks until they figure out his defensive limitations and just overall like inability to grasp NBA concepts, and then gets benched, kind of the way he has been in Sacramento, in Indiana, and in Philadelphia. And I didn't practice what I preached. I had him low in my ranks, so I don't have much Buddy Hield. I'm willing to admit we likely missed out on that one. But also, like, folks, you know what's coming. When he cools off, it gets ugly. And then it turns even uglier because he doesn't know how to shut off the faucet. And then Karis LeVert, who's on a serious heater right now, he's shooting 60% to open the season. This is also a career mid-40s guy. And when that comes down, bye-bye, Karis LeVert. He's number 85 in 9-cat with the insane field goal percent. So that'll fall well outside the top 100 when he cools off. If you're confident enough to start him, I'm not. Of these guys, by the way, on the stream while hot dudes, Pritchard, Herter, Monk, Clarkson, Dort, Hield, and LeVert, the ones that I personally will give the Dan Besbris stamp of approval would be Peyton, Pritchard, Dort, and Hield. Those are the 3 guys I would start right now and kind of see how it goes. I'm too afraid to play Herter, Monk, Clarkson, or LeVert. And I don't think Jordan Clarkson is even hot right now. He's on this board just because at some point he will be, and that's when we'll have to make that kind of call. And I'll probably say don't do it while you guys are yelling at me that he needs to be on the ads list. But I want you to remember this day because this is why we have him on the stream while hot board, so that we have something we can point to when he does get hot, and you guys are saying he needs to be a rest of season ad. And I'll be like, this is what we've been doing, guys. We're not going to change this. Woo! Week 3 in review in the books. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you guys like the Shaggin' Wagon hat or it for good luck here on this Friday. I'm at Dan Besbris over on Twitter. I hope you guys will find me there. We'll have another show coming up in a couple of hours today, previewing all 30 teams over the weekend. So we'll take a look at everybody's upcoming game, what we're going to be watching for in those. And I'm not going to do the injury replacement board again in that show because it's already in this one. So if you're watching this show, refer back to the injury board here. I guess the only reason to do it in the next one would be to show folks how many burgers guys get. All right, we'll flash it up in that one too, because I'll just do a screen grab of my free Google sheet where you guys can see the injury board as I'm working through it. I have to change some color coding because I try to highlight players in yellow that are actually active on a given night. I don't know how long that's going to be able to keep up, but I did it for 2 days. So I think that pretty much means I'll do it the rest of the year, he says, knowing he definitely won't be able to. Old Man Squad is the network feed. Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. Please remember to hit the like button. Feel free to comment if you so choose. I try to get back to all of those over time. 5-star on Spotify is so easy to do. So easy. It's just right there on the screen. With Apple, again, you got to go to the podcast app and find the show, but not the episode, and scroll all the way down. I know that one's a pain in the butt. So I will love you triply if you actually go and do that one. And again, thanks so much for watching. Let's just keep getting this stuff out to the masses. We'll keep growing and we'll keep winning. I'll see you guys in a little bit. Toodaloo.